Alright, what's goody? You too. It's your boy, Jersey here. And as you can see, we're doing something a little different today. In today's video, we're going to be talking about specifically my idea for a Pokemon competitive team. And the reason why I want to do this is because I just want to give you guys what I'm thinking about when it comes to creating my team, my original teams for competitive, just to try them out to see what the meta is going to be like. And another thing is just that Stall got a big nerf with all healing moves going down to 5 PP. So I actually feel like I might do a little bit of competitive play to an extent. I'm going to try to get better at VGC, but the current team I have right now is specifically for singles because that's what I'm okay at. With that being said, I wanted to build a team around Palafin because in the last video I recorded in this same sweatshirt, because I literally recorded it 30 minutes ago, I realized how kind of broken Palafin seems. And also King Gambit possibly. So I wanted to try to build a team somewhat around them two, with Palafin being a quote-unquote lead, but it's really just going to be an insta swap. So with that being said, we have Palafin is going to be our lead, in which he's obviously pure water, which gets countered by grass, and electric. So my thought process here was, unlike in my previous video which I said swap into Bellibolt, I instead decided that I might just go with something that this Pokemon is in the national dex, or he isn't, not national dex, he is in the regional dex. So I thought it'd be fair, but this is the only Pokemon I pulled directly from the regional dex. Everything else I pulled from new Pokemon. And I decided to go with old reliable Garchomp to counter the electric. So if someone tries to counter lead me by going with a Bellibolt or anything that's an electric type, I'm going to insta swap into Garchomp, as long as they don't have a way of forcing my Palafin to stay in, which I think that could be possible. But you could easily like choice scarf your Palafin, and then U-turn or whatever move it's gonna flip turn or whatever move it's gonna be given to rotate out with. You could do that and go into something like Garchomp. The only thing that would scare me would be like a Regieleki, who's more than likely still faster. Actually, no, not more than likely, is definitely still faster. But things like that would still scare me, but I don't, because it has base 100 speed, so it should realistically be fine swapping out. And we have, obviously, if we're gonna bring in Garchomp, Garchomp has a quad weakness to ice, which I'm thinking about having Garchomp be my terrestrialized Pokemon and terrestrialize in either ground or dragon. I don't really care which one. More than likely probably ground, because of the fact that it only has, it doesn't really have too many weaknesses, but it also keeps its one immunity to electric. That's what I'm thinking. Gets rid of its double weakness to ice and gives it a better stab onto earthquake. So this one will probably be my terrestrialized Pokemon. If that, there's another Pokemon on my list that might be my terrestrialized Pokemon. But with Garchomp, obviously gets that ice weakness, and it has a dragon weakness, and it also has a fairy weakness. Now, let's go with the ice weakness first, since this is most important weakness. I didn't really know where I wanted to go with this one, simply because I was a little lost, because I know that ice gets beaten by, like, I believe steel, rock. No, I think it beats rock. Give me 1 second to double check something right quick. I think it beats rock. I don't want to tell you guys wrong. I'm almost certain. Yeah. So offensively, it beats ground, grass, flying, and dragon. Defensively, it loses to fighting, fire, rock, and steel. So I was right. So I was thinking I might go with a rock type. That's what I was thinking. But eventually I decided upon going with King Gambit, simply because Garchomp's Palafin and Garchomp are going to be the main offensive forces here. They're going to be balancing off of each other. And if I can throw King Gambit in there to even revenge trade against an ice type, I think it would be very beneficial to have. However, I kind of thought that maybe having an additional strength against ice would be kind of beneficial. So we'll hold that for later. But let's talk about King Gambit's weaknesses. King Gambit's weaknesses is one, it's kind of slow. And its weaknesses, its type weaknesses is fighting, fire, and flying. Now, there's one major thing when it comes to dealing with a fighting type. And it's the fact that it can hit ghost types, and it's also weak to fairy type. And fairy would also help deal with the dragon weakness from Garchomp. I was soul searching for a ghost fairy, and I managed to find one. That's going to be another Paradox Pokemon, or it's going to be a Paradox Pokemon, the first one that I've mentioned, and that is going to be Fluttermane. Misdreavus's Paradox Pokemon is Ghost Fairy, and that type looks especially astonishingly good. It's got 3, you heard me right, 3 immunities, being normal, fighting, and dragon. That's gonna be nice. And it also gets rid of that dragon weakness, and it also helps deal with the ever so abundant fighting types. So that's just an all-around really, really good mold for the team. I think that Fluttermane is probably literally the perfect Pokemon. And when I mean the perfect Pokemon to pair alongside those two, to add to King Gambit's and Garchomp's destructive force, I think Fluttermane is perfect, especially because it's a Misdreavus as well, so it's going to have amazing coverage moves, and could also be a terrestrialized Pokemon if you see fit of it getting a 3rd stab. And if you give it a more defensive type, like if it gets like any steel move, GG. Wrap it up. Goodbye. So, with that being said, it does lose to ghost types. However, ghost types are also countered by King Gambit. However, it still does lose to steel types. And my thought process here was that both of these, or that the last 2 Pokemon, need to be able to handle both steel types and ice types respectively. The reason why I say that is because, in my personal opinion, I was starting to think that I needed to make sure that Garchomp, my supposed almost carry, isn't going to be killed by a stray Ice Beam. And those 2 Pokemon that fit really, really perfectly, in my opinion, they're both Paradox Pokemon, so I don't know if they're going to have a limit on Paradox Pokemon, but if they do, then this team kind of falls apart. If it's 2, then it's fine. I'll figure something out. But one of them gets rid of Palafin's grass weakness, which is Iron Moth, the Violet Paradox Pokemon for Volcarona. That Pokemon is going to be Fire Poison. Thus, it hard counters grass. It also beats fairy types. And it also easily counters ice types. So thus, giving the load off of King Gambit, making it where you first go into Iron Moth to beat your ice types. And you could also go into Iron Moth to beat fairy types, because it quad resists fairy. So it is my fairy counter. It is my fairy counter. So, with that being said, I think that is a brilliant 5th piece And I think the final piece, the final piece needs to be able to deal with Iron Moth's newfound water weakness. Needs to additionally be a counter to ice types. Needs to also deal with flying types. And also, it wouldn't hurt if it's a little beneficial against steel types. And now, that Pokemon specifically, that's a little difficult to find. And the reason why I say that's a little difficult to find is because it needs to be a Pokemon that is strong against ice and is strong against flying, but also not weak to steel. Meaning that it can't be a rock type, because rock types are weak to steel. And it can't realistically be a ground type to be strong against steel, because steel is weak, because ground is weak to ice. The only types that I could think of off the top of my head was fighting, which loses to flying, but if you pair it with electric, it doesn't lose to flying. It's a neutrality now. And there actually is a fighting electric type that is in the regional dex, and that is Iron Hands, Hariyama's Paradox Pokemon, which adds the final bit of bulk to this team. Where Palafin is decently bulky, decent natural bulk. Kingambit was my only Pokemon that was decently bulky. Iron Hands is also now equally as bulky. Now, the only thing that does hurt this team, give me 1 second to give you guys the stats right quick, is the fact that we don't really have a special wall. However, we don't really need walls, we just need Pokemon that are decently bulky and decently fast. Whereas Palafin Hero has 100 base speed, 160 base attack, he's got 106 special, and 87 special defense with 97 defense and 100 HP. Which is, okay, I mean, that's nothing to scoff at. However, Iron Hands has a whopping 154 base HP, 140 base attack, 108 defense, but it has like no special defense. So, that's the only downside to this team, is the fact that I don't really have a true cut special wall, because Kingambit also has 100 HP, 135 attack, 120 defense, and 85 special defense. So basically, all of my boys are gonna have to take their own special hits because of the fact that nothing on my team can really deal with special hits, because also, if you want to throw in another Pokemon that might have been able to take special hits decently well, it doesn't really have the highest HP stat, being Fluttermane. It does have 135 special attack, 135 special defense, and 135 speed, but it only has 55 HP. So yes, it can take hits, but I rather wouldn't want it to. So the only downside to this team is the fact that it doesn't really have a special wall, and realistically, it is very, very heavily offensively biased, but I think that's going to be fine due to the massive nerf of recovery moves. So that is my official first competitive team, being Palafin, Kingambit, Iron Hands, Garchomp, Iron Moth, and Fluttermane. If you guys want to see me use those Pokemon in action in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet when they release on Friday, I definitely will try to get my hands on all of these Pokemon. I definitely do want to try. I'm looking forward to trying Kingambit, since Bisharp is one of my favorite Pokemon. Palafin, definitely. Fluttermane looks like it's going to be interesting. I do probably want to try that one out too. With that being said, I'll probably have another competitive team thought of. I'm probably not going to release it this week. I'll probably release it next week. But I'll definitely have another team thought of before then. But with that being said, I'm out. Peace out.